My husband cheats on me with another woman because my lingerie was not sexy enough, but I tell him I will wear the lingerie he gave me to mock me with another man. Less than 2 months ago, I, 35 years old, had a marriage. Today I am filing for divorce. A few Fridays ago, it was a normal day and I had nothing special planned. I had a morning meeting at work followed by lunch with some colleagues. But since our supervisor was in a good mood, he told us we could leave early. I was going to use the free time to surprise Jackson, 36 years old, my husband for only 7 weeks. We had been together for almost 5 years before getting married. Jackson never mentioned any serious problem between us. In fact, our physical relationship was always frequent, at least 4 times a week. Jackson frequently told me how much he desired me. He sent me passionate messages during work. Sometimes these messages appeared on my phone while I was in meetings, which made me blush. I quietly opened the door of our apartment wanting to surprise him. Maybe we could use the afternoon doing something interesting. I went to the bedroom where I heard what he was doing, which was very clear. I didn't waste time opening the door to catch them, but what I saw was even worse because they weren't covered by anything and I saw everything. And when I say everything, I mean everything. Without saying a word, I turned around and ran out. I heard Jackson calling my name when I reached the elevator, but I didn't stop. I got in and pressed the button repeatedly until the doors closed. He was naked, so I hoped that once the door closed he couldn't follow me. I went to my brother Kevin's house, the first place I could think of. Kevin, 38 years old, and his wife Lisa, 37, welcomed me without asking questions when they saw the state I was in. I managed to tell them that Jackson had cheated on me, but not much more. They accommodated me in the guest room and gave me space, but told me they were available if I needed them. During the weekend, Jackson called and texted constantly. I put the phone on silent and only checked it occasionally to see messages from other people. By Monday morning, I felt calmer. The shock had subsided a bit, replaced by a dull pain in my chest. I was making coffee in Kevin's kitchen when someone knocked on the door. Kevin opened it and I heard Jackson's voice pleading to talk to me. Kevin came first to the kitchen and asked me if I wanted him to throw Jackson out. A part of me never wanted to see him again, but another part at least needed answers. Kevin, Lisa, and their 10-month-old son were going to lunch, so I told Kevin he could let Jackson in. Before leaving, Kevin looked at Jackson with a warning expression to behave with his younger sister. Once they left, Jackson tried to approach me. I motioned him to stop with my hand and told him, "Stay on your side of the island," pointing to the kitchen counter that separated us. "If you come any closer, I'll scream." Jackson stopped and stood in front of me. He started with an apology for what he had done. But here's the interesting part, he said he had cheated on me because of my lingerie. According to Jackson, I never made an effort for him. He said the comfortable cotton lingerie I wore every day was a sign of disinterest and made him feel like I didn't really care about our relationship. In all these years together, he had never mentioned that my lingerie was a problem. He had never bought me lingerie or suggested that I wear something different. When I told him this, he excused himself saying, "I didn't want to offend you by calling your lingerie ugly." I asked him directly if he was saying it was my fault that he had cheated on me. He didn't answer, he just looked at me with tears in his eyes. I remembered that his little friend wasn't wearing anything when I found them, but maybe my mind blocked those details from the shock. I don't know, everything had become blurry after opening the bedroom door, and to me both were naked. Jackson asked me what I wanted to do next, because according to him we could fix this. He started talking to me about the other woman, saying she meant nothing. But I interrupted him. I didn't need to hear about her. Instead of telling him my true decision at that moment, I told him I needed time to think. This wasn't true. I had already decided. But if I told him at that moment, we would have had an argument and more crying. Jackson seemed relieved with this answer and left shortly after, without saying much, just thanking me for thinking about it. Once alone, I thought about his excuse. I've always preferred cotton lingerie in neutral colors. I buy Calvin Klein basics because they're comfortable. I have a large bust, which makes most sexy bras uncomfortable to wear all day. They require constant adjustments and attract unwanted looks. I've never felt unsexy with my comfortable lingerie. Not even once. I love my body and I exercise almost 2 hours every day. I feel confident with how I look. Jackson's comments made me question everything he had ever said. He often told me that I drove him crazy and that I could turn him on with just a look. All of that was a lie. He was pretending the whole time. The worst part was realizing this happened less than 2 months after our wedding. I wish I had discovered his true character before the ceremony. Now I was facing a divorce process that would probably take months to complete. That afternoon I contacted a lawyer. The marriage was too short to annul it in our state, so divorce was the only option. I asked my lawyer to start the filing process immediately. When Jackson found out about the divorce filing, he was very, very angry and disappointed. He accused me of moving too fast and lying to him because I told him I would think about it. Funny, coming from a liar. One message mentioned our last kiss and how he wouldn't have let me go if he had known. The irony was not lost on me. Hours after that last kiss, he was in our bed with another woman, and according to my memory, without lingerie. Jackson's mother called me several times. She apologized for her son's behavior and asked me if I was okay. However, her real concern came out later in our conversation when she mentioned the financial implications of our divorce. Jackson owned the apartment we lived in, as well as several rental properties and a small cabin at the lake. His mother was worried I would claim half of everything despite our very short marriage. In our country's legal system, all assets owned by either spouse, no matter when they were acquired, are considered joint property and divided equally in a divorce. While Jackson seemed more focused on stopping the divorce entirely, his family was more concerned about the financial aspect. 3 days after our conversation at Kevin's house, a package arrived for me. It was beautifully wrapped with a ribbon. Inside was expensive lace lingerie in my exact size. There was no note, but I knew it was from Jackson. His message was clear. I called my best friend Carol, 34 years old, and asked if I could stay with her for a while. Before leaving Kevin's house, I told him I was going to Carol's house, but I asked him not to say anything to Jackson. I explained that Jackson had done something hurtful and would probably try to apologize later. I was too embarrassed to share the details of the lingerie incident. It's not something you talk about with your brother. As expected, Jackson showed up at Kevin's house looking for me. He also called me and messaged me about 50 times the next day. He even went to my workplace hoping to find me there. I had called in sick. This brings me to where I am now, devastated and hurt. Whenever I'm alone, the tears come without warning. I can't understand why Jackson would want to cause me more pain. It wasn't enough that he cheated on me in our home, the place that should have been my safe haven. Why send the lingerie? Why? I filed for divorce. I followed my heart. I considered posting photos on Instagram wearing the new lingerie, but I decided not to do it. I'm not the type of person who posts sexy things on Instagram, not even when I'm working out or anything like that. So as much as it would have been good revenge, I'm not going to do that now. I don't know whether to throw it away or keep it as evidence for the lawyer. I don't know, maybe it will serve to prove something. Anyway, I am filing for divorce and that's it. As for the lingerie Jackson sent me, I decided not to destroy it or return it. Instead, I'm keeping it for the next time I have sex, which obviously won't be with Jackson. That was probably what he tried when he sent it to me, that I would wear it. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. Even though he thought I would wear it with him. I should clarify something about our situation, since many people asked in the comments. I'm not American. In my country, all assets, whether acquired before or during marriage, are considered joint property and divided equally in a divorce. This applies no matter how long the marriage lasted. Right now, Jackson is still focused on stopping the divorce completely instead of worrying about the division of assets. However, his family is more concerned about the financial implications. They keep trying to find a way to get an annulment instead of a divorce, probably to avoid the 50-50 split. I've been staying at Carol's apartment for the last week. The distance from Jackson and his family has helped me clear my thoughts. Carol has been wonderful, giving me space when I needed it and a distraction when I start overthinking things. Jackson's mother called me again yesterday. This time she was more direct about her concerns regarding Jackson's properties. She mentioned that it seemed unfair for me to receive half of the assets that Jackson had worked for years to acquire, given our very short marriage. I listened politely but didn't get involved in her arguments. My lawyer advised me to avoid these types of discussions with Jackson or his family. Last Saturday, Jackson showed up at Carol's building. I have no idea how he found out where I was staying. He waited in the lobby for 3 hours until Carol saw him when she went out to buy groceries. Carol came back without the groceries and told me he was downstairs. I refused to see him. Carol went down again and told him I didn't want to talk to him and that he should leave before she called the building security. He finally left, but not before giving Carol a small box to give to me. Inside the box was a key to our apartment with a note that said it would always be my home. I also placed the key and the note in an envelope and handed it to my lawyer to return it to Jackson. My lawyer informed me that Jackson's lawyer had reached out suggesting mediation instead of proceeding directly with the divorce. Apparently Jackson believes we can fix this with a marriage counselor. I instructed my lawyer to reject mediation and to continue with the divorce process. Yesterday, I returned to work for the first time since the incident. I had told my supervisor that I was dealing with a personal matter. When I arrived, I found a large bouquet of flowers on my desk. My coworkers were curious watching my reaction. I took the flowers and carried them straight to the break room and left them there with a note that said they were for anyone who wanted to take them during lunch. My supervisor pulled me aside and mentioned that Jackson had been calling the office repeatedly asking to speak to me. He wanted to know if everything was okay and if I needed the company to take any action regarding his calls. I explained briefly that Jackson and I were separating and asked them not to put his calls through. He was understanding and immediately gave instructions to reception to block his calls. When I returned to Carol's place after work, I found Jackson sitting on the stairs outside the building. Carol was still at work, so I couldn't avoid him without making a scene in public. He stood up when he saw me, blocking my way to the door. He asked why I hadn't responded to any of his messages or accepted his gifts. I told him I had nothing to say to him and asked him to move aside. When he didn't, I walked around him toward the building entrance. He followed me, continuing to talk. He mentioned seeing my Instagram story, a silly post I made, and said that proved I still cared what he thought. According to him, if I really wanted to move on, I wouldn't have posted that. I kept walking without responding. And just as I reached the building door, he said something that made me stop. He claimed that the woman I found him with had set him up. He said that they met at a bar the night before, and she suggested going to our home the next day. According to this new story, she seduced him by telling him she would wear the exact type of lingerie that he had said I never wore. This completely contradicted his original excuse. I turned to look at him for the first time since I arrived. Without saying a word, I entered the building and let the door close behind me. Inside the elevator, my hands started trembling. By the time I reached Carol's apartment, I had to sit down because my legs felt weak. That night, I received a text message from Kevin asking how I was. I hadn't spoken much to my brother since I left his house. I told him I was fine. He replied saying that both he and Lisa missed me and that their door was always open for me. He also mentioned that Jackson had been calling him every day asking about me. This morning my lawyer called me to inform me that Jackson's lawyer had made an unofficial financial offer. Jackson would give me the equivalent of 1 year's rent for an apartment similar to ours, plus a lump sum payment, if I agreed to waive any rights to his properties. The offer was far below what I would be entitled to under our country's laws. I left because I never wanted his properties. I just wanted a husband who respected me. I asked my lawyer to proceed with the divorce as planned, without making counteroffers at this time. The legal process will determine the fair division of assets according to our country's laws. That night I'm going out with Carol and some friends. For the first time since everything happened, it's just dinner at a casual restaurant, nothing fancy, but it feels like an important step. I will wear my favorite jeans and a new blouse I bought yesterday, my first purchase since I left the apartment I shared with Jackson. First, the legal situation. My lawyer informed me that Jackson finally accepted that the divorce would proceed. His lawyer stopped suggesting mediation and began to focus on asset division. They proposed a settlement where I would receive 30% of the total assets instead of the legal 50%. My lawyer advised me not to accept this first offer, although I wasn't planning to, and let him negotiate. 2 weeks ago, Jackson's mother showed up at Carol's apartment building. Unlike Jackson, she did not wait outside but came directly to Carol's door. When Carol opened it, Jackson's mother stepped forward and entered the apartment. She found me in the living room and immediately started talking about how I was ruining her son's life and destroying the financial security of their family. Carol threatened to call the police if she didn't leave immediately. Jackson's mother ignored her and continued saying that Jackson had fallen into depression and wasn't eating. According to her, he had lost weight and called her crying every night. When she finally paused to breathe, I calmly asked her how she had found Carol's address. She avoided the question and instead pulled out her phone to show me photos of Jackson looking thin and unshaven. Carol stepped in between us and told Jackson's mother that she was trespassing. Only then did she leave, but she told me that karma for what I was doing would come back even stronger. That night Jackson called me from a new number. When I answered without knowing it was him, he sounded desperate. He asked me to meet with him in person. Once again I refused, because all communication had to go through our lawyers. Then he said he had been wrong regarding the lingerie. According to him, it was never about what I wore or didn't wear. He claimed that he had been stressed about work and the sudden responsibility of marriage and had made a terrible mistake. I stayed silent until he asked me what I thought. I ended the call without responding to his new excuse. The next day I received an email from Jackson with dozens of screenshots attached. They were all text conversations between us throughout our relationship. He had highlighted every message where I expressed my love or where he had complimented me. At the end of the email he wrote that he would wait for me no matter how long it took. I forwarded the email to my lawyer without replying. Last weekend I went back to Kevin and Lisa's house for their son's first birthday party. I had been avoiding family gatherings, but I didn't want to miss my nephew's special day. Kevin assured me that Jackson would not be invited. Yesterday I viewed a rental apartment near my workplace. It's smaller than the one I shared with Jackson, but it has large windows and gets good natural light. The landlord approved my application today and I can move in next week. Carol has been wonderful, but I'm ready to have my own space again. This afternoon I received a notification from my bank about an unusual transaction. Someone had tried to transfer a large amount from our joint account which had been inactive since I left. The transfer was to an account I did not recognize. The bank flagged it as suspicious and blocked it. I immediately called my lawyer, who advised me to close the joint account and transfer my share to a new account solely in my name. When I went to the bank to do this, I discovered that Jackson had withdrawn almost all the money 2 days earlier, leaving only a small amount. The blocked transaction had been an attempt to transfer the remaining balance. The bank manager helped me file a report, and my lawyer is now adding this incident to our case. He believes this strengthens our position in the divorce proceedings and shows Jackson's willingness to act unethically. When I returned to Carol's apartment after the bank, I found another delivery waiting for me. This time it wasn't lingerie but a photo album. Inside were pictures of our wedding day, our vacations together, and several moments from our years as a couple. On the last page was a handwritten note, "Do you remember us?" I closed the album without reading further and set it aside. Carol offered to dispose of it for me, but I told her I would give it to my lawyer, like everything else Jackson had sent. That night Carol suggested that we go out to dinner to distract me from the day's events. As we were leaving her building, we saw Jackson's car parked across the street. He was sitting inside watching the entrance. Carol suggested that we go back upstairs and order food for delivery instead. But I decided that we shouldn't let him control our actions. We walked directly in front of his car toward the restaurant. He got out of the car and called my name, but we kept walking. No, he didn't follow us. During dinner, Carol mentioned that she had received several messages from Jackson asking about me. She had ignored them all, but she wanted me to know. I thanked her for telling me and for being such a supportive friend through all of this. When we returned to Carol's building, Jackson's car was no longer there. Tomorrow I will meet with my lawyer to discuss the incident with the bank account and our next steps. The divorce process moves slowly but steadily. I've started looking for furniture for my new apartment and thinking about how I want to decorate it, small steps to build a new life. It has been 3 months since my last update. I have been living in my new apartment for more than 2 months. It is becoming a home. I bought furniture that reflects my taste and even started a small herb garden on the balcony. The divorce is finalized. In the end, Jackson accepted a settlement where I received 50% of our total assets, and he's not going to drag out the divorce any longer. My lawyer said we could have fought for more because of everything that happened, but I didn't want to waste any more time on this and it seemed fair to me. If I had done it, we could have been stuck for years. The day after the divorce was finalized, I spoke with Jackson on the phone. It was the first direct conversation we'd had in months. I decided to allow it because there were some practical matters to discuss about transferring my belongings from our old apartment. We started by talking about those practical matters. I told him that my friend Michael would pick up my remaining things the following weekend. Jackson agreed without any objections. That day Jackson asked if we could meet in person one last time. I refused. He apologized for making me feel bad and insisted it was never about the lingerie. According to him, he had always found me beautiful. I responded with a simple "I know." What else was there to say? He apologized for sending the lingerie, admitting he had acted out of anger. Again I said, "I know." Then Jackson asked me to throw away the lingerie, repeating that I was beautiful even wearing a potato sack. I told him I planned to keep it and wear it the next time I had sex. I added that when I did, I would remember him and thank him for the confidence boost. There was silence on the line for several moments before Jackson changed the subject. That conversation marked the end of our direct communication. Jackson made one last attempt to contact me a week later, sending a message asking if we could at least be friends eventually. I didn't respond. Instead, I blocked his number and removed him from all my social media. Kevin and Lisa invited me to dinner last weekend. During dinner, Kevin mentioned that Jackson had moved out of our old apartment and had left the city. Apparently, he accepted a job offer in another state. Lisa quickly changed the subject, but I appreciated knowing this information. It meant it was less likely I would run into Jackson unexpectedly. Last month I received a promotion at work. My supervisor cited my professionalism and dedication during what she knew had been a difficult personal time. The promotion came with a significant pay raise, which allowed me to accelerate my savings plan to eventually buy my own place instead of renting. There are the properties I got from the divorce, but I feel repulsed by them, so I will only keep them as rentals. I could sell them, but I've come to the conclusion that I'd rather have the extra income than get all the money now. Carol and a few other friends organized a small celebration for my promotion. During the party, Carol's cousin, Michael, 38 years old, was there. We had run into each other briefly at previous gatherings, but had never really talked much. This time we ended up having a long conversation. He invited me on a sort of date and I accepted. Michael and I discovered we had many common interests. He asked me if I'd like to go to dinner sometime and I said yes without hesitation. We've had 3 dates since then, taking things slowly. Michael knows the basics about my divorce but hasn't pressed for details, which I appreciate. Last week, while unpacking a box of winter clothes I hadn't needed until now, I found the lingerie that Jackson had sent me. I looked at it for a long time, remembering my words to Jackson during our last conversation. Then I placed it in a donation bag along with other clothes I no longer needed. I'm really not going to use it to be with another man. It wouldn't be fair to that person. But if I have left Jackson thinking that yes. Yesterday I bought new lingerie, like 2 basic cotton Calvin Klein pieces in neutral colors. As I placed them in my drawer, I smiled at the familiar routine. Some things haven't changed and that's perfectly fine with me. I wonder if this will be my last update or if I will have something more to tell in the future. I keep the door open. After more than 1.5 years, when I thought I would have nothing left to update, I come with something to tell you. But first, a brief summary of my life. I have been able to buy a house with what I have saved from my job and the rental properties, so that's good. I have also gotten another promotion at work, which is always positive. At this point, I don't need more money than I earn month to month, but I do need the challenge of new responsibilities. In the end, my relationship with Michael didn't work out, not because there was any problem between us, but simply because it wasn't the best timing. We had a few more dates, but things cooled off between us. Maybe my promotion and the increase of responsibilities at his job made us drift apart. But we didn't end on bad terms. However, I have been in a relationship with another person for almost 5 months, and for now everything is going very well. Sometimes things just have to click. Now, to the information I have received that led me to make an update. Do you remember that my ex-mother-in-law was very vocal about the properties and ruining the family finances? Well, now there's a reason. Jackson's mother and also his sister wanted those properties for themselves because they have never been very good with money. I don't know why, since everything I know is through my brother, but Jackson left them the properties. Maybe because Jackson left the city and didn't want to manage them anymore. Unlike me, they sold them to get quick cash, and that money is gone. A very powerful irony, because I wasn't the one who took away all their financial security. It was the family itself. A very small piece of information, but it was the perfect excuse to come back here and talk with all of you.